A woman ate an entire meal, then demanded a full refund, saying, "It didn't taste good." When I declined, she smirked and said, "I'll just lie to your corporate and get you fired." The staff laughed as I pulled up security footage and whispered, "Then you'll love the part where you said, 'This is the best meal I've ever had.'" I manage a restaurant in Chicago. It's not some high-end 5-star place, but it's definitely a step up from your typical chain spot. We serve everything from steak and seafood to pasta and burgers. The kind of place where people celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, or just come in for a nice night out. Most customers are fine. Some are great. And then, there are the ones like her. Let's call her Diane. Diane came in alone on a Friday evening, right at the dinner rush. The place was packed, the kind of busy where the air is full of clinking silverware, quiet conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter. A normal night. Diane wasn't a regular. She didn't seem to know any of the staff, and no one recognized her. She looked put together, well-dressed but casual, early to mid-40s, expensive handbag, the kind of customer you'd assume would be polite. She got seated, looked over the menu for a while, and when the server, Jake, went to take her order, she was friendly. Even charming. "Diane, everything on this menu looks amazing. What do you recommend?" Jake, "Depends on what you're in the mood for. Our steaks are popular, and the seafood is fresh. The short ribs are a customer favorite, too." Diane, "Oh, the steak sounds perfect. I'll do that. And maybe an appetizer, the shrimp cocktail. Oh, and I can't say no to dessert. What do you suggest?" Jake, "The chocolate lava cake is really popular." Diane, "Perfect. And a glass of red wine. Something smooth." Everything seemed fine. She got her shrimp cocktail, took her time eating it, nodded in approval, and even told Jake it was delicious. Her steak came out next. Medium rare, just how she ordered it. She took the first bite, closed her eyes, and smiled. Diane, "Oh my God, this is the best steak I've ever had." Jake, who's been serving for years, gave his polite server laugh. Jake, "Glad to hear it. Let me know if you need anything else." She took her time. Cut each bite carefully. Finished everything. Then came dessert. The chocolate lava cake. She took the first bite, sighed happily. Diane, "Wow. This is amazing. Compliments to the chef." Jake smiled, said he'd pass it along. She finished every bite. By all accounts, it looked like a perfect dining experience. And then, the check came. The second Jake set the bill down, her entire expression changed. Her warm, happy smile vanished. She slowly picked up the bill, looked it over, and sighed dramatically. Diane, "I wasn't happy with my meal." Jake, thrown off by the complete 180, hesitated. Jake, "Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. What was wrong?" Diane, shrugging. "It just wasn't good." Jake looked down at the empty plates. Not a single scrap of food left. Even the wine glass was dry. Jake, "Was there something specific you didn't like? I wish you had told me earlier. I could have brought you something else." Diane, shaking her head. "I don't want something else. I just want my money back." Jake had seen plenty of customers try to weasel out of paying, but this was bold. He kept his cool. Jake, "I can check with my manager and see if we can offer a discount." Diane, scoffing. "No. I don't want a discount. I want a full refund." Jake excused himself and came to get me. Now, I've been doing this long enough to know when someone is trying to pull a fast one. This wasn't about the food. This was about seeing if she could get away with it. I walked over, friendly as ever. Me. "Hi, I'm the manager. I heard there was an issue with your meal." Diane, leaning back, arms crossed, smug. "Yes. I didn't like it." Me, glancing at the empty plates. "I'm sorry to hear that." "What didn't you like?" Diane, shrugging again. "It just wasn't good." Me. "I understand. I just want to make sure we address any issues so we can improve." "Was it the steak? The dessert? The shrimp?" Diane, waving me off. "It just wasn't good. I shouldn't have to explain myself. I'm not paying." Now, at this point, I know exactly what she's doing. Me. "So, just to clarify, you ordered a full meal. Ate the shrimp cocktail. Ate the steak. Ate the dessert. Drank the wine. And now that you're done, you want all of it refunded?" She tilted her head and smiled. Diane. "Yes. Because if you don't, I'll just call corporate and tell them you were rude and the food was disgusting. And then you'll be fired." "Oh. I've had customers try to complain their way into free food before, but no one has ever straight up admitted to lying." Now I could feel the other customers watching. A few tables had definitely picked up on what was happening. My staff was watching too. I had two options: cave. Give her what she wanted. Refund her meal. Let her walk out knowing she could do it again somewhere else. Stand my ground. And make sure she never tried this stunt again. I smiled. Me. Ma'am, we actually have security cameras in the restaurant. Would you like me to pull the footage and check? Her confidence flickered for half a second, but then she smirked. Diane. Go ahead. It's my word against yours. I nodded. Me. Perfect. Give me 5 minutes. And I walked away. She had no idea what was coming. What Diane didn't know was that our cameras don't just record video, they record audio, too. And I knew exactly what I was looking for. I pulled up the footage. My kitchen staff, servers, bartenders all gathered around as I played it back. And there it was. Crystal clear. Her cutting into the steak. Oh my God, this is the best steak I've ever had. Her eating the dessert. Wow. This chocolate lava cake is amazing. Compliments to the chef. The kitchen erupted in laughter. Even Luis, our head chef, was wheezing. Luis. Didn't know we made the best steak she's ever had. Me. Yeah. Neither did I. Until she wanted a refund. I burned the footage to a USB drive. I grabbed the receipt. And I went back out. I walked back to Diane's table, USB in hand, receipt tucked neatly under my fingers. She was sitting there, arms still crossed, that smug look plastered across her face like she had already won. I sat down across from her. Not something I normally do, but this moment deserved it. I placed the USB drive on the table and slid it toward her like it was evidence in a courtroom. Me. So, I pulled the footage. Diane barely glanced at it. Diane shrugging. And? Me, leaning in slightly. It's got everything. You raving about the steak. The dessert. The shrimp. Everything you just claimed wasn't good. For the first time, I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. Diane, quickly recovering, smirking. So what? That means nothing. It's just a video. I picked up the receipt, tapped it lightly on the table. Me. See, here's the problem. If I refuse the refund, you're going to call corporate. You're going to lie. Say the food was bad, say I was rude. Maybe even throw in something about bad service. Right? Her face didn't change, but I could see her hands tighten slightly around her purse. Me. But if you do that, I'm just going to send them this footage first. Her jaw twitched. Me. And if you dispute the charge with your bank? I'll send the footage to them, too. Credit card fraud is a serious offense. Diane, voice lower now. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Me smiling. I know. Which is why I'm willing to let it go, if you pay the bill and walk out like a normal customer. She stared at me, eyes narrowing. Then, to my surprise, she laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not embarrassed. Genuine amusement. She picked up her purse, slowly unzipped it, and pulled out her credit card. Diane, grinning like a fox. Fine. You win this one. She slid her card across the table. Jake, standing nearby, picked it up immediately and walked to the register. I didn't say anything. Just watched her. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't angry. She was entertained. Diane, tilting her head. You're good, you know that? I didn't reply. Diane, leaning in, voice lower. Most managers would have caved. You didn't. I like that. Now, I've seen a lot of different customer types. Angry ones, rude ones, clueless ones. But this was different. This wasn't just a scam. She was testing me. And for some reason, that made my stomach turn in a way no screaming Karen ever had. Jake returned, receipt in hand. Diane signed it slowly, then slid it back with a smirk. Diane, guess I'll have to find a different restaurant to try next time. And with that, she stood, adjusted her purse, and walked out the door. The second she was gone, the restaurant exhaled. Jake and a few servers started whispering. The kitchen was still laughing in the back. Luis poked his head out. Luis. She leave? Me. Yeah. Luis, grinning. That was some real FBI-level takedown, man. I smiled, but something about it didn't sit right with me. I walked over to the register, glanced at the receipt. Then I froze. She had tipped Jake $100. I grabbed the bill and walked straight to the door, pushing it open, scanning the street outside. She was gone. A woman who had just tried to scam us, who had threatened my job, had left behind a $100 tip. This wasn't guilt. This was a game. And she had just invited me to play. I wasn't about to let this sit. I pulled out my phone, opened the restaurant's reservation system, and searched for her number. If she had made a reservation, I'd find it. Nothing. She had either walked in randomly or used a fake name. I turned to Jake. Me. Did she give you a name when she ordered? Jake thought for a second. Jake. Yeah, but she only said Diane. No last name. And she paid with a card, but I don't remember the name on it. I pulled up the transaction. Rebecca Simmons. Not Diane. Fake name? Stolen card? Who knew? I did a quick Google search on the name. Nothing unusual. But something about this wasn't sitting right. A scammer doesn't just tip big for fun. Unless she wants you to remember her. The next morning, I got to work early. Before the lunch shift, before anyone else was there. I opened the restaurant's email, scanning through the usual junk. Then, near the top of the inbox, I saw it. A message. No subject line. Just an email from Rebecca Simmons. I clicked it. Inside was one sentence. You played well. Let's see if you can keep up. I sat there, staring at the email. You played well. Let's see if you can keep up. My stomach tightened. This wasn't over. I glanced at the sender's email address, some generic Gmail account, nothing personal, nothing obvious. No last name. No business domain. Just another dead end. But she had made a mistake. I clicked on the message details and checked the IP address. It was local. She was still in Chicago. Now, I wasn't about to go full detective over some scammer with a taste for games. But something about this wasn't sitting right. People like Diane, or Rebecca, or whatever her real name was, they don't just pull cheap refund scams for the hell of it. She had resources. She had confidence. And most importantly, she had done this before. I closed the email, but before I could even process my next move, the restaurant phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before picking up. Me. Hello, this is, restaurant name, how can I help you? A pause. Then, Diane, or Rebecca, or whoever the hell she was. You check your email? I gripped the phone tighter. Me. You have too much time on your hands. Diane's soft chuckle. I like keeping people on their toes. She sounded calm. Too calm. Diane. You know, you're the first restaurant manager that's actually been fun to mess with. Most people just cave. You fight back. I respect that. I didn't say anything. I wasn't about to play into her little mind games. Diane, ignoring my silence. So tell me, did you figure out which name was real yet? I wasn't going to let her know I had already checked the credit card name. Me. You're wasting my time. Diane, amused. Oh, I don't think I am. Because I bet you're thinking about me right now. Trying to figure out why I left the tip. Why I emailed. Why I called. She was right, but I wasn't about to admit that. I decided to throw something back at her. Me. You left behind enough clues. You're not as clever as you think you are. For the first time, she hesitated. A tiny moment, barely noticeable. But it was there. Then, she laughed again. Diane. Good. This'll be fun. Click. She hung up. I put the phone down and sat back, heart pounding a little harder than I wanted to admit. I wasn't about to just sit there and wait for her next move. I logged into our reservation system again, but this time I did a wider search. Not just for Diane or Rebecca Simmons, but for patterns. And something stood out immediately. Over the past year, we'd had a handful of refund disputes, every few months. Always the same pattern, solo diner. Expensive meal. Everything eaten. Claims the food was bad. Threatens to call corporate. Different names each time. Different contact info. Different credit cards. I pulled up security footage from one of them, 3 months ago. A woman at the bar. Different hair color. Different outfit. But the same mannerisms. Same smirk. Same shrug when the bill came. Same, I wasn't happy with my meal. Excuse. She had been here before. I checked other flagged transactions. 3 restaurants within 5 miles of ours had reported similar scams. And then I found it, a news article from last year. Chicago restaurants warn of serial diners scamming local businesses. My breath caught as I scrolled down. They had a blurry security photo of a woman sitting at a table, pushing a plate away with an exaggerated look of disappointment. I clicked the photo. The face was slightly different, wig, makeup, something, but I could tell. It was her. I wasn't about to wait for her to strike again. I called Luis and Jake into the back. Me. We have a problem. I pulled up the footage, showed them the past scams, showed them the news article. Jake's eyes went wide. Jake. That's her. That's literally her. Luis, shaking his head. Man, we should have called the cops. Me. We didn't have proof before. We do now. Luis leaned in, frowning at the screen. Luis. So what's the move? I exhaled. Me. We wait. She's going to come back. And when she does, I tapped the security footage. Me. We make sure this time she doesn't walk out so easily. Luis grinned. Luis. Now you're talking. And just like that, the game was on. For the next week, I watched every dinner shift like a hawk. Nothing. Then, on Thursday evening, just as the dinner rush was starting, Jake stiffened at the host stand. I followed his gaze. And there she was. New outfit. New hair. New name. Same smirk. She walked in, looked around, and locked eyes with me. I smiled. She smiled back. She knew. I knew. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. There she was. Same smirk. Same confident stride. New disguise. She wore a sleek black blazer this time, her hair now a deep auburn, styled in waves that framed her face. A pair of oversized sunglasses rested on her head, like she had just come from an afternoon of shopping. She looked put together, calculated. She wasn't just here for a free meal. She was here to see if I had the guts to stop her. I glanced at Jake, whose face was a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Luis had already stepped closer, arms crossed, watching the entrance like a guard dog ready to pounce. She stepped up to the host stand, flashed a pleasant smile. Diane, or whatever name she was using now. Table for one, please. Jake hesitated, looking at me. I nodded. Me. Of course. Right this way. If she wanted to play games, fine. I was done playing defense. I led her to a table near the back, one that was perfectly within view of our security cameras. As she sat, she glanced around, almost like she was checking for exits. She knew something was off. I kept my voice even, polite. Me. Can I start you off with a drink? She tilted her head, studying me. Diane. Just water for now. I need a moment to decide. I nodded and walked off, my heart pounding. Luis, waiting near the kitchen, raised an eyebrow. Luis. You sure about this? Me. She's already here. Might as well see where this goes. Jake, lingering nearby, shifted uneasily. Jake. What if she tries to pull the same scam again? Me. Oh, she will. But this time, she won't be walking away so easily. Luis grinned. Luis. You're enjoying this a little, aren't you? I didn't answer. Because the truth was? Yeah. I kind of was. Diane took her time ordering. She did it with a careful precision, as if she wanted us to know she wasn't rushing. Shrimp cocktail. Filet mignon. A glass of Merlot. Same exact order as last time. I wanted to laugh. I watched as she took her first bite. Her eyelids fluttered slightly, like she actually enjoyed it. A real food critic would never let that reaction slip. She was still getting sloppy. Then she took a sip of wine, leaned back, and let out a small sigh, like she was soaking in the moment. She was comfortable. Good. Because that wasn't going to last. The moment the check was placed on the table, it happened. Her smile disappeared. She set her napkin down, carefully, like she had just remembered something deeply disappointing. Then she sighed and did the exact same routine. Diane shaking her head slightly. You know, I hate to say this, but I just wasn't happy with the meal. I walked over, slow and steady. I wasn't about to let her control the pace. Me. That's surprising. You seem to enjoy it. Diane, shrugging, looking effortlessly bored. It was fine, I guess. But I don't think it was worth paying for. I let the words hang for a moment. Then I smiled. Me. You know, that's funny. Her expression twitched. Diane. Funny? I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small USB drive, and placed it on the table. Me. Because last time you were here, you said it was the best meal you'd ever had. And I have it all on video. The restaurant went silent. Diane stiffened, her hand gripping the table edge. Diane, voice lower now, controlled. I don't know what you're talking about. I nodded toward Lise, who was already walking toward us with a tablet in hand. He pressed play. Her own voice rang out, clear as day. Oh my God, this is the best steak I've ever had. Wow. This chocolate lava cake is amazing. Compliments to the chef. The color drained from her face. She glanced around, realizing people were watching. Then, she did something I didn't expect. She smiled. But it wasn't her usual smugness. It was something darker. Diane softly amused. You really went through all this trouble for little old me? Louise took a step forward, voice firm. Louise. We're calling the cops. Diane, raising her hands slightly, mock innocence. For what? Not liking a meal? Me, shaking my head. For fraud. For scamming multiple restaurants. For stealing. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, she laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Diane. Oh, honey. You think I'm the only one doing this? That stopped me cold. Diane, leaning forward slightly. There are dozens of us. We swap names, credit cards, hit different places every few months. You caught me, so what? You think the police care about a couple of refund scams? Jake, standing nearby, swallowed hard. Louise muttered under his breath. I stayed still. I had expected her to panic. To run. To make excuses. But instead? She was taunting me. Because she knew the truth. She could disappear tonight, and there'd be another one in her place next month. Diane grinning. You're fun, though. I'll give you that. Then she stood up. Louise took a step forward. Louise. Sit back down. Diane laughing, waving a hand dismissively. Relax, chef. I already paid this time. She grabbed her purse, adjusting the strap, and turned back to me one last time. Diane mockingly. Maybe I'll see you again, manager. And with that, she walked right out the door. We watched her go. No one moved. No one spoke. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The cops didn't do much. We filed a report, sent them the footage, but they barely blinked. Petty fraud. Not a priority. I called a few restaurant owners I knew, warned them about her. Some had seen her before. Some hadn't. Jake stopped taking solo diners at face value. Louise got harsher about refunds. And me? I started watching more carefully. Because she was right. There were more of them. And next time? I wouldn't just be waiting. I'd be ready.